Good news, everyone! The slime farm that we built in the last episode has been a huge success. It has taken many more hours of me grinding my way through the caves and lighting them up, but now down here you'll see we've got quite the collection of slime balls. And this should be more than enough for the custom designed tree farm we're going to build in today's episode. But first of all, we're going to peer into Tango's remarkable nether hub, which looks absolutely gorgeous. He has put together a beautiful, insane experience for us hermits. I mean, look at this. We've got stars in the background, and some of them are actually colourful beacon beams. There are floating paintings too. Oh, it looks so cool. There's also a giant enchanting table over here. And this library theme is seriously cool. Tango has knocked it out of the park for us. The one downside is that my FPS takes an absolute beating in this area when I move around. I've tried to optimize my game, getting the right configuration of mods and settings, and it just doesn't come together. But when you stand still in one spot, you can look around and it looks pretty amazing. Hopefully I will find a solution at some point, but for now I need to head into the end dimension, which you do by plummeting down into this pit here. It's sort of a leap of faith as you go into the void. And the reason I need to head here is to repair my tools. You can see my shovel and my pick have taken an absolute beating. And that's because I've been rather busy lighting up the caves around our slime farm. And I've worked up quite the appetite. So much so that I've resorted to eating bone meal for the time being. Yeah, I don't know why people knock it as a food source. It may not have the most saturation, but the thing is, I've got tons and tons of bones lying around. So I guess this will be my new food source from now on, and that is going to last me a very, very long time. Let's talk about the slime farm and the process of lighting everything up. I have made some changes, as you can see down here. We've got a bridge of tinted glass. The AFK spot is actually going to be directly above the slime farm. And so I've added one of our spheres, which again is just a client-side visual thing, around the spot that we, the player, will stand. And that's because mobs won't be able to spawn inside of this sphere. And from down here you can see how measured that point is, because it won't affect slime spawning on the bottom of our farm at all. So this helps optimize the farm, and it also means that I don't have to light up as many caves. But let's now check out my progress with that. And to do this, rather than bringing on my camera account, I've installed a mod that simply allows me to sort of drop into camera account mode. And what you might notice is that the movement is a little stiff and clunky. Why does this amuse me so much? So with this camera we can sort of fly around and see all of the caves that I've been lighting up, and over there in the background all of that red is the larger perimeter, which again has been moved to me standing over here. So one of the things that I did is I went up to the top and I lit up pretty much everything up at this level around the stone here, but you can see there are tons of like dark patches that I need to revisit and find and light up with torches. And as we just whiz around here, you can see some areas have been really well lit up and other areas I've barely touched. This project is going to take a very long time to complete. I should also mention that wherever I go I try and take out as many water sources as I can, because once all of the water's out this area, it then also makes it a great spot for a glow ink farm and also a regular ink farm too. In fact, we're probably going to design most of our mob-related farms around me standing AFK in this spot, so all of this effort that I'm putting in will be worth it in the long run. And maybe it can provide me some passive gold from these pigments that wander out of the portal, although I am confused. Why do they all come and stand over here in the very corner of the farm? And if we look at our torch count here, you can see I've placed another 1,500 torches since the last episode. And these are the spoils of all of my mining, as you can see, picking up a heck of a lot of resources. But along with that, something else that's going to be very important for the ribcage part of our base, and that is gravel. Aha, we're going to need tons of this because I'm going to end up needing a lot of black concrete. Which I guess means I'm going to need to start work on that squid farm sooner than later, right? But anyways, I just heard a squishy sound around here. And if we go into the free cam and just look down, there's a slime spawning here, and it's outside of our slime farm, which is not good. So here's a feature I didn't get around to showing you in the last episode. MiniHUD will actually render a highlight of the chunk that you're in if it is a slime chunk. So when we run around the world lighting it up with torches, we're not actually going to stop slimes from spawning in other slime chunks, which means that I would have to slab the floors or cover them in lava. So as I work on this perimeter, if I want to increase the efficiency, I'm also going to have to lay lots of slabs down in areas like this. And this, my friends, will be something that I just chip away at in the background. So now we move forward as we're going to be building a tree farm that I've designed. This is an automatic one, and it's actually the first time I've ever done a contraption like this. Now in terms of location, we are underneath the mountain where the skull is, and our distance from these slime chunks can be seen if I activate the spawn sphere. So in this direction is where the rib cage of the skull is going to stretch down from above, and it will probably actually come inside of this cave. But from there, I will make connections over to where our various different projects are. And there really is no master plan, so I've just kind of picked a spot. I felt like this cave right here was good. It meant I didn't have to do a lot of digging out. And as you can see, I put down a couple of blocks already. We have a clock activating a dispenser full of bone meal, and this isn't going to waste anything if it can't actually be used. Now, all automation kind of starts with detecting an event. And then from there, if you can get a redstone signal, you can automate the rest of the process, right? The event that we want to detect is the growth of a tree, and we can do that by converting a sapling into a block, and then we get a redstone signal. And with that signal, we want to move some of the wood out of the way to grow another tree. So using some observers and note blocks, we can send a signal upwards into these sticky pistons. Those will be 1-tick pulses, so it actually needs to receive 2 signals, which is when this turns on and then off. And this is going to happen too quickly for me to turn around, right? Yeah. Let's go ahead and grow another tree and just watch the thing in action. You can see a little bit of redstone at the bottom there, and perfectly it pushes all across, ready for us to place down the next sapling. So far, so good, but now's where it starts to get a little bit technical, as we need to build a crazy contraption involving sticky pistons, observers, honey blocks, slime blocks, and glass. And all of these are going to link together to push in from the sides and remove the leaf blocks. This is because we need the farm to be self-sustaining. So as I, the player, am putting in saplings, we need to have them given back from me. And that's not going to happen unless we destroy those oak leaves in between growing each tree. It was also the very first bit that I decided to design for this tree farm. You can kind of see what it's going to do straight away, right? We have sticky pistons for a double block extender. That means that this can go out not once but twice, and as you can see, we need to push it in at twice on either side. We have the glass blocks on the front so that the sticky blocks don't stick to anything else, and because of that, their size is a little bit limited, but it's just enough for the oak tree farm. As you can probably tell, I haven't actually powered or tested this thing yet because all of the oak leaves are still there, so let's go ahead and see this thing in action. We want to flick this lever multiple times. So there's the first one, they go all the way out. We then flick it again. They haven't come back in yet. And then once more. So that means that it takes 4 redstone pulses to power this thing correctly. And down here on the bottom, you can see that we got some sticks and saplings, so we're going to need a collection area down here too. So quick redstone lesson, when it comes to observers, you have to think about signals differently than just being on and off, although the changing state of a signal, as you can see, will create power through the observers, which has led to a whole bunch of special wiring you can't quite see. Aha, that's much better, and this series of repeaters and observers looks seriously cool. However, it's been built symmetrically where it really doesn't need to. We actually only need one of these circuits, and I could have just ran the redstone around to the other side, but I decided to make it symmetrical. So let's imagine that our tree grows and the signal travels up here and pushes all the blocks across. Well, with this observer, the next event will be to then create the correct set of signals to go through this redstone wire to push all of these blocks into the middle and pull them back out again. And that's what we're going to do now. We're testing it live. I really hope that this works. Sometimes it does take a while for a tree to grow. And there it goes. And they get pulled back out again. It worked flawlessly. But I really do feel like the best way to experience this is with the camera account. And right on time. Oh, look at that. That's so satisfying. Alright then, so the next step is to have a bunch of hoppers, collect all of the drops and feed them to the player. But we've also got some additional redstone below before we put in all of those hoppers. So I've got a few of them right here feeding to a dispenser, and you can see the redstone that we had before just simply sits on top of it. Now, when these contraptions push in from either side and destroy the leaves, we actually want to stop another tree from growing for a moment. So because of that, we've added a sticky piston down here that can push the observer clock, and it will no longer power the dispenser. So that's hooked up to a comparator signal decay clock, so when we turn this off, you'll see that it creates a little bit of time before this thing can be active again. And as you'll see, that is activated after a tree has grown through this bit of redstone, but we can also turn it off when we wish to do so. So when we leave the tree farm, we don't have to leave the clock running. So far, so good. Over here, we've got a dispenser and a spot for the player to stand. And it's directly below that we need some water to take any excess drops away, because everything is going to be fed into this dispenser. That includes sticks and apples, but the player's inventory will be full and the only thing they'll be able to accept are the oak saplings. In fact, let's go and chuck some in and take a step back. You can see that we've got this clock here to automatically dispense the items. So when the player is stood here, they'll be facing upwards and be able to put the sapling in the correct spot and just hold down right click. Here we go again, another tree has grown. We're just going to watch that process one more time. Yeah, that's the whole contraption right there. It is a thing of beauty, isn't it? And when filled up with hoppers, you might note that I don't really have a way to get out of here unless I throw an ender pearl, right? Well, for that, we've got a minecart over the back here that I can pop into to get out. And right next door, we now have the way in. I've attached this spruce door here, simple open and close to get inside. You'll see that we've got all of the hoppers in place to collect all of the saplings, deliver them to the player, or if they don't pick them up, they'll come through the water stream to a little storage area here. Now we've got these big pillars of terracotta here too, and those are so that the honey blocks on the sides don't accidentally pick them up like if they were glass when sweeping in and back out again. And that's pretty much everything. Well, it's not actually, and the next bit is something I've been dreading, as this is as far as I got with creating this tree farm. We also need to use TNT to blow up the wood that comes out of here and then collect all of that in a water stream system, which will get to the point where I'll have no idea what I'm doing. We'll have to figure it all out. Of course, I built these sorts of things in the past, but they've always been other people's designs, and this season I kind of want to find more excuses to do things my own way. And so while I'm tinkering around with TNT and learning the fundamentals in a redstone testing world, I wanted to share with you what Keralis has been up to in our shared farming area. So to jog your memory, we have a shared area with a mob farm, and then I built a bad omen farm at the pillager outpost, and this is so Keralis could get that effect to kickstart his raid farm. This thing is quite literally insane. I can barely comprehend what's going on here, but it seems like an entire raid is just summoned at once, and then seconds later another entire raid comes along. This results in some really bizarre activity up the top where you've got Ravengers constantly spawning and dying. What a peculiar sight. And just below it you can see all the mobs of the raid just like popping into existence, and then the shifting floors sending them down below. It is bizarre. And over here you'll see clearly there's some sort of exploitative magic with villagers and changing their profession. And there are so many items being produced by this thing that at the moment Keralis is literally just burning them. We will end up doing like we did with our other farms, sending these items into the nether, where we're going to have to build some sort of mega storage system. It is a seriously cool project, and I recommend you go and check out Keralis' episode working on this to get the full details. So all of these TNT explosions seem to have tarnished my skin somewhat, although I do suspect that it might be something different. So I wanted to walk you through my experience with developing a blast chamber using TNT. So I started off with some very simple testing just to get an idea of where this was going to go. And this and a few other experiments informed me that we're probably going to need our oak blocks to be pretty close to the TNT. So if we have a single wall of blocks like this, we are more likely to get a consistent blast where all of the drops can fall down below. So my idea from here was pretty simple. If we could feed in all of the log blocks and push them downwards like this, then we could drop in some TNT activated from a dispenser, and if we time it right, it will blow up the blocks at the very bottom that then collect in the water stream. So then I decided to introduce a comparator signal decay clock. Not only would that dispense the TNT, but it would also hold it back using a piston as well, but as you can see, it drops too far down. So with a modification, we can actually make this clock slower by adding the block in here, and then the timing is far better. You might also notice there's a piston facing downwards here. For some reason, this piston would always get bub powered, and I guess actually now I see it, it's because this one is quasi-powering it. So yeah, both those pistons are needed, and check out the timing, it sort of detonates somewhere around here, which is just perfect. And one more time now. Yeah, look at that. That's what we're after. So the next thing that we want to do is funnel in oak logs into our farm, and something you should know that makes this kind of tricky is you can't use observers and pistons like this, because the observer then ends up detecting the piston going back and forth. So the way you do this is with classic redstone torches and redstone like that, and every time a block is in front of the piston, it'll push it along. And then there's going to be the added challenge of taking the wood from the tree, which will come through like this, and turning it into a single line like so, which I didn't get around to figuring out. But I did get this far. So in comes the log, and as you can see, it pushes it along. It's also activating that one too. Interesting. Anyway, it gets to the other corner and it starts to push it along. It gets over here. You get the idea. So with some extra wiring around the edges, when the logs come all the way across, you'll see that everything gets pushed into the middle, although because we already had some logs here in the way, it's all gotten a bit wonky. So we remedy that by first of all having the space below the pistons cleared, and then attaching this redstone here to the same system to activate them later than the rest. So let's go add a block, everything gets pushed into the middle, and then it all gets pushed down by one. So things might be looking good, but we are going to run into some issues here. I've now attached an observer down the bottom to detect when the oak wood goes in front of it, and you can see that's then going to activate the TNT. So fingers crossed, let's go ahead and simulate this. The next block will trigger off a series of events. Including the TNT, which is going to fall down. And here's where things go wrong. It blows up all of the wood wonderfully, but sometimes... Oh, interesting. Okay. So it was on the second explosion that we lost these redstone torches, and it looks like they may have actually been shielded by the wood in front of them. So this was the point where I gave up on the idea, because I thought the TNT explosions are going to destroy redstone components and therefore make all of this useless. But now I've added a T flip-flop down here, which means we'll only get one explosion. So let's go ahead and see how this does. So that's what the starting position needs to be, and this will set off a chain reaction of events. Down goes the TNT. No, we got a clock, and I've just blown up all of my redstone. Why do I torture myself with redstone like this? I've got to build it all again. This time we're going to get it right. Look at that. One signal has been created. Down goes the TNT. Explosion. And then this thing has been reset. And that is extremely promising. So now we need to convert the tree into a series of logs like this, which might seem sort of simple, but immediately it starts to look a little complicated. Like, you know, what do I do next? I can move that one along, but then I need to do something different up the top here. So that will be a challenge and a puzzle for another day, because as I had mentioned, I gave up on the idea when I thought that the TNT was blowing up some of the redstone components, whereas actually it double fired, and I hadn't realized that. So here you'll see I've come up with an entirely different solution. So this is simply going to create a big block of wood. Let's imagine that a tree has been sort of pushed through. The one at the bottom will push it across to the top, and then that'll keep pushing them across. When it gets over here, it pushes them out like so. And then when they get all the way over here, this will actually run around to the circuit that turns off the farm. So when the block is full, we can't use the farm anymore. So all of that blast chamber stuff that I showed you, I actually did that a couple of days ago when I couldn't record. And now we've actually sussed out the key problem, we could go ahead and build one. I also think I got a solution on how to convert a vertical stack of logs into a single row of blocks for the blast chamber. So, you know, we'll probably rip this out and then build that at a future point. But let's do a time lapse and see this thing in action already. And as you can see, I decided to get a little fancy with the replay mod and offer you up 4 different angles. You might notice a lot of bone meal is getting used because sometimes the trees are a little bit stubborn about growing. And initially I struggled to get this thing going. I had to make some modifications that I'll show you in a moment. But if we look to the top left, you can see tons of logs are coming through. Some stone blocks I left there getting pushed along as well. And this thing, it only took 10 minutes to fill up, which really surprised me. So when I ran this test, there were a few other hermits on the server, and for some reason these glass blocks kept getting like stuck one across. So I had to change the wiring at the back to just be typical redstone, and the target block here is because I had to rearrange some stuff at the top. Now that worked, but I had another problem as well. Mainly the amount of bone meal I was using was kind of ridiculous, so I had to feed in a few extra hoppers across the top and then fill all of this up with bone meal. And interestingly, we've only used 2 rows, maybe you could say just under 3 rows in total. Now also some saplings were kind of like flying out through these blocks and dropping down into this space. And here in this freeze frame from the replay mod, you can see that we got some inefficiency with items up the top here, just kind of landing in the wrong spots. So we have room to improve, but one observation is that the tree actually never grows higher than 6 blocks tall. And we also need to make sure that there's some light sources above this thing so that mobs don't spawn on it. But we'll sort out all of that when I get around to decorating this farm, which is something I'm really looking forward to, but it might take a while. Perhaps in the next episode, we'll be looking at some modifications, as I've got ideas on how to fix up some of the issues that you just saw. And there is probably over 500 blocks in this big square, which is close to 8 stacks. So that many in 10 minutes, to me, that's a complete success. Oh, and this thing is self-sustaining because I still have a stack of saplings over here. And we also collected a handful more too. So what does this all mean? We will now have enough wood to build our storage system, which was going to be the plan for the next episode, but I might just see where things take us, as there are interesting things unfolding all over the server, one of them being here in the ribcage. As you will see in this spot, I've actually started work on the very top of the ribcage, and it's just an amazingly long way to go. Like, how many ribs are there in the body? I've got to do a lot of digging, right? Anyhoozle, I will crack on with that grind and all of the others, and I'll have stuff to show you in the next episode. So if you enjoyed this one, be sure to leave a like. Thanks as always for the support, and I'll see you again with another one. Bye bye.